Hi, I'm Stephanie Dyer, and this is Escape Into a Cause, the podcast about the people and nonprofits driving real impact across Central Texas. I am not the expert, but I get to sit down with the folks who are. And we talk about what it actually looks like to give it back, get involved, and strengthen the community we live in. This week, Courtney Dickey, former president of the Junior League of Austin, and someone who's been showing up for nonprofits her entire life, joins me for our Topics That Matter conversation. We're breaking down the basics. What even is a nonprofit? What's a 501c3 versus a 501c4? Might sound like alphabet soup, but those little codes tell nonprofits what they can do, how they can fundraise, and whether you get to write off your donation at tax time. Then stay tuned for my conversation with Lisa Barden, Executive Director of Keep Austin Fed. September is Hunger Action Month, and this nonprofit is tackling two huge issues at once: hunger and food waste. An average food rescue with Keep Austin Fed takes about an hour and provides 160 meals while keeping 190 pounds of perfectly good food out of the landfill. If you've been looking for the perfect way to spend an hour, maybe with a friend, a spouse, or even your kid in the car, and make a real difference for your neighbors and for the planet, you're going to love this episode. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Courtney.
Hey, Steph.
We've never really, just you and I, sat around and said, hey, what is a nonprofit? What is a charity? What is a 501c3? We hear all these terms.
We just dove in.
We dived straight in, and we're several episodes down the line, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe we should go
Back
to the basics.
Yes.
Well, I'm not that informed on these either.
Yeah.
So I'm excited you're here, but I'm also glad that I've done a little bit of research.
So am I. Yes.
So what does all this mean? Let me know. What are initial thoughts?
As to like the definition of a nonprofit organization.
We've got nonprofit. We've got 501c3 along the same lines, tax-exempt charity.
Yeah. So a nonprofit organization is an organization that is not meant to make profit, and therefore the revenue that they receive should not be taxable. That's the whole attempt. If you donate to one of these nonprofit organizations, you will actually get a receipt that you can deduct from your own personal taxes. Now, all of the special numbers and letters that go with it, and if it's a 501c3 or a 501c4, those actually all go back to codes in the tax code and numbers in the tax code. So you can go back and see exactly what type of entity they are and what their purpose fulfills. So for example, I think like a 501c3, any nonprofit that is assigned this particular number and part of the tax code has to be like charitable, educational in nature. They can't do anything political, for example, or from a networking perspective or educational. Those are different areas of the tax code. That is what a nonprofit is in general, but it does get a little bit complex with respect to your point, the tax treatment and the benefits that donors receive for contributing to those nonprofits.
Yeah, exactly. You were correct. So nonprofit is really an umbrella term. And then you can have all these different tax codes, like you said, 501c3, 501c4. And just to kind of break that down a little bit, the gold standard of what you want as a charity, of course, is a 501c3.
Those are the typical ones, yes.
Exactly. And the reason you want that is because not all nonprofits are alike. 501c3s allow the organization to be tax exempt. And as a donor, you want to make sure it's a 501c3 because you can write off if you itemize your taxes. But not all nonprofits are 501c3s. The 501c4 are for social welfare groups like ACLU, NAACP, Sierra Club.
Yes. So I believe the Sierra Club is environmental. The NAACP is civil rights, as is ACLU. They're involved in advocacy and influencing political decisions and policy. So they would not fall under 501c3 because they are not purely educational or charitable in nature.
They lobby for policy. For this, they are tax exempt as an organization, but you as a donor cannot write off your taxes.
That's correct.
So not tax deductible. People that are donating for the cause, not a tax break.
That is correct.
Similarly, 501c6 is business leagues, chambers of commerce, real estate boards, trade associations, the NFL. Do you know that they are tax exempt?
Why? Because
they're a trade association.
I was about to say they're an association. Do you think it's the NFL or do you think it's like the Players Association?
Is that the NFL?
Okay. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. I have so many questions. Yeah.
I do too. Again, donors cannot write off, but they are tax exempt. Yeah. And this typically promotes a common business interest, and it's not meant for public service. But a lot of people who submit dues or sponsorships to these business associations usually can deduct them from a business if you own a business. So there is usually some type of write-off component for a lot of people.
Then there's education. Are you getting into that one?
No, so public schools, they said, are government.
Yes.
And then said that there's two types of private schools. There's private for-profit, and they're for-profit. And then they said private nonprofit is a 501c3.
Oh, isn't that fascinating? But yes, many private institutions, colleges, and you're right, it can be for-profit, nonprofit. They are also tax exempt. They're not paying taxes on the revenue that they receive, with the concept being that they're recycling it back into the education of the students that are enrolled there. But obviously, a hot topic now is the administration potentially revoking their tax exempt status based on their behavior and internal philosophies. I don't know. Yeah. This is a really interesting time where we're seeing nonprofits face scrutiny for the first time on this tax exempt benefit. And yeah, it's gonna put a lot of nonprofits through the ringer. That's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
And do you know about churches?
Oh, no, tell me more. I tithe, but I've never written that off.
Yeah. So most churches are 501c3. So donations are tax deductible and they are tax exempt. Here's the difference. They don't have to file the same 990 as other 501c3s because there's a religious component. We don't have transparency into churches, like financial transparency, as we do with other charities.
And this is why we see all the documentaries on Netflix.
Isn't that interesting?
That's interesting. Yes. Thankfully, the church that I attend, although it's part of a much larger denomination and council and all of the different degrees of governance that they have in the church, but they show us a budget and we see where our funds go and they show us how they're using it. But you're right, that sounds like it's just at the election of the individual church and not necessarily, again, the higher denomination. You know, what's interesting too is there are some organizations, like I think, for example, sorority. So I was a national council member of a national sorority. The sorority itself, because it's a private membership organization, was not a 501c3. However, they had a foundation, and the foundation attached to it was a 501c3 so that they could accept donations with the benefit of, hey, if you donate to us, you will be able to deduct this from your taxes. Even organizations that don't quite qualify kind of get around it by creating these separate foundations.
There's a few other organizations that do this. The ACLU has both a 501c3 for legal education and defense and a 501c4 for advocacy and lobbying.
Yes.
So when you donate, you need to make sure which one you're donating to.
Right.
And NRA also has a 501c3 foundation for education and safety programs.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
So there are workarounds.
There's workarounds. That's right.
I think that's really it. The last piece was just the fact of being tax exempt. This is, again, just that 501c3, 501c4, and it's an umbrella. The federal government says you don't owe us federal taxes. You don't have to pay
that
us.
You receive. That's correct.
And not all tax exempt orgs are 501c3s, which we just went through. But although all 501c3s are automatically tax exempt, it's just churches are automatically, I think it's a 16-point question, 16 questions, and however they answer them, if they answer them a certain way, they're considered a church and do not have to go through the same protocols as another 501c3. Yeah.
And that's why you also see sort of different organizations try to define themselves some way. Like, yes, we are a church, so we can fall under this, or we are educational, so we can fall under this. It's trying to take advantage of the system as much as possible. I think it goes back to our other conversations that we've had around motive. And does it matter how they're classified as long as the impact is there? But I mean, we've talked about a number of organizations that aren't necessarily charitable in nature and yet are getting the advantages of being tax exempt. On that note, there are also some other limitations on these tax exempt organizations that might even fall under 501c3. For example, there's this concept of UBIT. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh, universal basic income?
Very close. Unrelated.
That's UBI.
As the accountant, like you're like going through your entire flip book of acronyms. So many acronyms.
So many.
UBIT, unrelated business income tax.
Oh, uh-huh.
If you receive, as a 501c3, I can only speak to that particular type of nonprofit. If you receive revenue that is unrelated to your mission or your purpose, you actually can be taxed on that particular revenue. So some nonprofits, so maybe this is the situation with the NFL, I'm so curious. So some nonprofits will choose, for example, to run a separate business to be additive to the revenue that they're receiving either through grants, donations, galas, whatever it might be, and pay taxes on it. Or they try to make a really creative argument that like, actually, no, this isn't unrelated. It somehow ties to our mission so that they don't have to. But there's this carve out for UBIT. So even tax exempt 501c3s could have a channel of income that they're actually paying taxes on.
Wait, give me an example of that. Yeah.
So Junior League of Austin, our mission is to develop and train women leaders to go out and make an impact in the community. And we are a 501c3, but we also run a business, and that business is an event space. We have this beautiful building in central Austin, and it is our headquarters. That is where we do our work out of, but still has a really hefty mortgage on it. We have to pay that mortgage, and we have this beautiful ballroom on the first floor. We can make income renting it out. But how is renting out a ballroom related to developing women leaders to change communities? We work with our auditors every year to say, how do we avoid this being unrelated business income? Because we don't want to pay taxes on the revenue that we receive from that particular business. How we have worked with our auditors and how we've worked within the system when we actually think it works really well is all of our members are required to work a shift. So they are learning about event planning and running a business and how a nonprofit creates and generates additional revenue in order to benefit the community that it's benefiting. And the majority of the organizations that rent out our building are nonprofits. So what's lovely is our volunteers, if a nonprofit is having a gala at the Junior League of Austin, we can say, let me work your table and I'll do your name tags for you, or let me be your coat check. And so all of a sudden, our volunteers are now involved in enhancing these other nonprofit organizations' events. Great training opportunity, also in an effort to avoid unrelated business income tax.
Interesting.
I
See,
know.
and taxes influence behavior.
Oh, 100%.
Nonprofits, 501c3s, tax exempt. We broke it down. We finally can go forward with these terms.
We can move forward in an educated way.
Thanks, Court.
Thanks, Steph.
We'll be right back. Escape into a Cause is sponsored by Nightlight Insurance Agency. You know how a nightlight gives you comfort and peace of mind in the dark? That's exactly what Nightlight aims to do. Guide you through life's uncertainties with personalized insurance for your home, auto, business, and more. Nightlight Insurance strives to provide its clients the best coverage at the best price without sacrificing on customer service. Here's what one client had to say. Nightlight was able to lower our car insurance significantly, answered all our questions, and returned our calls promptly. Very professional, would highly recommend. So it's no surprise Nightlight has a 5-star rating on Google. Nightlight also makes this podcast possible by covering production costs so all other sponsorship dollars and gifts can go directly to nonprofits and volunteers. And as part of their mission to give back, Nightlight proudly donates $1,000 to every nonprofit we interview. If you are a sponsor interested in giving back to our podcast, please find us on social media and let us know. Nightlight is an agency focused on personalized service and giving back. See how much you could save and how good it feels to have peace of mind by visiting nightlightinsurance.com. We are escaping into Keep Austin Fed, and I have Executive Director Lisa Barden here. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to hear all about Keep Austin Fed. How did y'all get started, and what do you do? What's your mission?
In a nutshell, our mission technically is to reduce hunger and help the environment by connecting surplus food with our neighbors in need. The sort of layman's terms, that means we're a food rescue organization. And so we take unsold food from grocery stores, restaurants, caterers, farms, etc., and we redistribute it to our hungry neighbors throughout the city. How we got started, actually, I did not found the organization. It was founded by a man named Randy Rosens 21 years ago in 2004. And he was volunteering at a gala event. And when it was done, he saw the caterers throwing away the food that was left over. And he said, if you're just going to throw that away, can I take it? Because there's a shelter down the street from me that I think would like it. And the caterer at the time was like, sure. And so he did that. And the shelter was so excited to have it that he thought, this is so simple. I could do this every day. And so he started with a very grassroots operation of friends and family. And they had about 6 bakery locations that they would go to daily and pick up the day-old bread and take it to a couple different shelters. And that's how it got started.
I love that. So you're tackling not only food insecurity, but waste.
Exactly. And that's key. We don't buy any food. So all of the food that we distribute is donated by these businesses.
Yeah, and those are your partnerships, correct?
Yes, we have many. We have the food donor side, the food contributor side, and that last year was about 93, I think, business locations. And then we have are recipient organizations where it's other nonprofits and communities where food insecurity may not be their primary mission or their primary focus, but they address a lot of the root causes of what leads to food insecurity. And so we work with them to get food to their clients where they already are. So that's one less stressor for their clients to have to worry about.
Yeah. Okay. So you were just talking about two things, right? The food contributors and then how you distribute the food, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The food contributors, I know you mentioned this is one of those times where we're not talking about HEB. I
Yes.
feel like that's a common thread in Austin.
Yeah.
But Trader Joe's, you said, is a big contributor. This is restaurants, caterers, grocery stores, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So Trader Joe's by volume is our largest contributor. We pick up from all three stores. And then Whole Foods Market is another big one. And then we get the smaller stores like Wheatsville, Sprouts Farmers Market, the Fresh Plus stores, et cetera. And then the catering companies, it might be after a big event, but also you have a lot of businesses downtown who cater food for their employees. And that doesn't always get eaten. And the food that's left over after they've served the employees for the day, they will set aside for us and we'll come pick it up and redistribute that.
Yeah. What a genius idea. Could you imagine going to a gala for a nonprofit and then throw it away afterwards?
Right.
That's a brilliant idea. Okay, great. And I know that there's a few volunteer programs.
So we are largely run by volunteers. I was the first paid staff member, and that started in 2016. So we are now up to 5 full-time staff members and 1 weekend staff member. But otherwise, we have about 150 volunteers helping us out every month doing food rescue runs, which is picking up from the food contributor and dropping off at our recipient location. Or they're helping out. We have 2 hubs, which are basically walk-in coolers where we temporarily store food really for a matter of hours. And so we have volunteers that come to the hubs every morning, sort through the food, make sure that what's going back out is grocery quality and not stuff that should be composted. And then we have what we call grocery giveaways in very specific communities that have added barriers to food access. And we go there, we take the table and boxes of food that have been donated to us and just let people kind of shop for what they need or what they want.
I'm just curious, going back to these partnerships and the grocery stores, is it like a pre-expiration date? Meaning, is it things that they're ready to move off the shelves, yet they haven't fully expired yet? Or what is their model?
Yeah, it's usually stuff that is approaching the sell-by date. If it's meat, they will freeze it. They'll do flash freezing for us. So we'll get it frozen by the sell-by date. So it's still perfectly good food. About 50% of what we get from the grocery stores is produce. And that you can tell at a glance whether it's good or bad. And it might be blemished. Sometimes they just, grocery stores get so many bananas, for example, and they just don't have room for it on their shelves. And so they're either pulling off what was on their shelves that's still perfectly good bunches of bananas, or they just got this huge delivery that they weren't expecting. They might have misordered. And so then they donate that to us as well. And then we don't get a whole lot of shelf-stable food. That is really about only 5% of what we redistribute.
But that just shows you that it really would go to waste.
Right.
These are all like fresh foods and meats and yeah. Okay, great. And then I also know no fundraising events. So y'all are not doing galas and you might be grabbing the food after other galas.
Exactly.
No fundraising events, no government funding, private donors, private grants. Is that right?
We have only received a little bit of funding from the city of Austin, but we've not received any state or federal funding at all. The majority of our funding does come from private foundations, family foundations, and then individual philanthropy. It's not that we've purposely not gone after government funding, but it's a really complicated process to go after government funding. And when you do get, say, federal funding, you have to do an audit, which is another like $15,000. So you have to go out and find a grant to give you an audit. We've found, our operation costs are fairly low because all our food is donated to us. And so we found that we've not needed the government funding, which in today's day, we're fortunate that we've not been relying on government funding. And then as far as fundraising events go, we have a small staff. It's really hard to pull that together. So we just haven't taken that step. We might work with other businesses who are doing, say, a golf tournament, and they make us the beneficiary of it. And then we'll have volunteers go out and help out with that golf tournament, but we're not pulling it together ourselves.
I also looked at your impact report. 1 in 7 people in Austin do not know where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 3 of those people are children, which I thought was a really strong stat that I haven't heard of.
Yes, it's crazy. And the rate of food insecurity in Texas is higher than the national average. And the rate in Travis County is actually higher than the Texas average, which is surprising because we're in an urban area. We should all be able to access food. Like you might understand in rural areas where it's a little bit harder to get access to food, but in urban areas, for sure, nobody should ever go hungry. There's plenty of food out there. It's not a production problem, it's a distribution problem. And one in about 65,000 kids in Travis County experience food insecurity, which is a ridiculous number. And it's crazy to think that these kids are not having access to the food that they need.
It's surprising. And there's just so many bubbles in Austin that you don't see it.
And in fact, when I started this job, I actually started as a volunteer with Keep Austin Fed. And when I started, I did it because I knew about the food waste side of things. I had just watched a documentary called Just Eat It. And it was about a Canadian couple that decided they were going to live for 6 months on just surplus food. So I was like, that's a brilliant idea. Let me see how this works. So I knew about the food waste in Austin, and I wanted to do something about it because it's terrible for the environment. Not only all the resources that go into producing that food, but then when it goes into the landfill, it generates methane, which is crazy bad for our environment. So I started volunteering with Keep Austin Fed. As I was delivering to different places, it was astounding to me how many nonprofits work with people living in poverty and how prevalent that is in Austin, which, again, like you said, pockets or bubbles that you don't necessarily see. And we see sometimes the people under the overpasses. We might see a couple of encampments here and there, but there are so many others that we don't see that are not unhoused neighbors. They are hardworking neighbors, and they are kids going to school, and they are parents and kids living in cars. They are domestic violence survivors. It just runs the gamut. There's just so many people that you wouldn't normally think. Hunger doesn't have the same face everywhere you look.
There's different nonprofits and organizations that work, say, to help with the kids' food on the weekends, right? They identify those children. That's like Junior League of Austin has their program, and also Hungry Souls. We recently spoke with them. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you find your families and who you're serving?
Like I said, we have this group of 90-something recipient partners that address some of these root causes. So we don't really deliver to individuals so much. There is only one apartment complex for older folks and people with disabilities that we actually deliver door to door. But other than that, we're really working with these other organizations. So we don't necessarily pick and choose the people we're providing the food to. We're giving it to the organizations. They're helping us redistribute it. We work with SAFE to get food there. We work with Salvation Army Rathgeber Center to get food to those families. We work with Street Youth Ministries to get some of the youth homeless folks. We work with Foundation Studios to get food to a lot of their apartment complexes. So it kind of runs the gamut. We say cradle to grave, faith-based, not faith-based. We're pretty agnostic as far as the partners that we work with, as long as they're serving people who need it.
And you are rescuing food that would go into the landfill anyway. So it's just you're connecting them with these organizations.
And that's really what the role of Keep Austin Fed is, that we're the logistics engine, we're the matchmaker, and we're the transport mechanism. Because a lot of these nonprofits, like I said, their primary mission may not be feeding people, so they don't have staff and resources to go pick up that food from wherever it is and get it back, or go find somebody who will donate food to them and bring it back to their facilities. So we are that matchmaker, and we provide the volunteers to make it happen.
I like that you're hitting on a little bit of a different need there, a different niche. Fantastic. And then I guess the other stat that I saw there was over 30% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten and ends up in the landfills. And I just thought that's over a fourth. It's wild to me. I mean, but it feels true. Like I think about it, and how often at restaurants you look around and people walking up and leaving. I mean, I think about, unfortunately, some of the things that go in my fridge. I mean, if my mom's in town, she's putting everything in the freezer. And then my husband's like, does this even go in the freezer? But I believe it. Something that speaks volumes to me is the fact that you said about 160 volunteers per month, but the amount of unique volunteers over the course of the year is not significantly higher. It's not even double that, which means that you have a recurring like core volunteer base, which I like what you said to me, I think when we first spoke, was that Keep Austin Fed is the best kept secret.
Right.
Yeah, and I really liked that.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, I think. One is that we have been doing this for 21 years, and yet still I meet people every day who have been in Austin their whole lives and said they've never heard of us before. And so how do we reach those people and say, come join us? Volunteering with Keep Austin Fed is so easy. Like we do have a 1-hour Zoom orientation now, thanks COVID, that just introduces you to what we do and why we do it. And then after that, you're a volunteer for life and you have access to our full food rescue schedule. And there's no minimum commitment. You can just say, I'm free that day, or that's my lunch hour. I can do that. And you sign up for it and you go and do it and you're done. And there's no waiting around somewhere to see what your assignment is. Everything is in the app to tell you exactly what you need to know. And that's it. So, how we get more people involved, because we're only limited by the number of people we have to make these food runs and the number of food resources we have. And it has to go hand in hand. We can't add another store or location if we don't have volunteers to go get that. So up in the outskirts of Austin, whether it's Northwest Austin or Pflugerville, Round Rock area, if we don't have a core group of volunteers, it's really hard for us to reach those areas because it's just a long way to drive for people who live and work in Austin proper to get out there and go pick up the food and deliver it. So we're always looking for more volunteers and trying to be a little less of a best kept secret.
Yeah. And everything I've seen about the volunteer experience, it seems just very straightforward, 1 hour shifts, right? So it's not
Yeah.
taking a ton of your
We
time.
we try and limit when we're doing the matchmaking. We try and limit it based on geographic proximity and appropriateness of food for the recipient organization and stuff like that. So we do try and limit it to less than an hour from pickup to drop off. Because also for food safety reasons, we think of it as, say you're going to the grocery store and you load up the back of your car in this 100 degrees heat. You don't want to be driving for an hour and a half, even with your air conditioner on. You don't want to have food out there in the back of your car for an hour and a half. So we try and limit that transport time so that the transport time is 20 minutes or less. So yeah, we try and fit everything to be an hour-long commitment. Some are shorter than that. Some are you're picking up and you're going around the corner to drop it off, and that's it. And so it takes 30 minutes or less.
One of your values is flexibility, which I like. I think everyone nowadays wants flexibility. Okay, easy enough. Are there any regions around Austin that you're really looking for more volunteers if a listener happens to be living in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say Southwest Austin, almost out toward Bee Cave area is one area we're looking at. Northwest Austin is an area we could use more, kind of out toward Cedar Park and Leander. And then again, like maybe the Pflugerville, Round Rock area, anywhere in Austin, you're going to be a help. If you want to be a volunteer, I think we average about 175 food runs per week. And so if we have 160 volunteers doing that, some volunteers are doing more than one. If we have more volunteers, we can do more food runs. And so really anywhere in Austin, but specifically we're looking at volunteers for Southwest, Northwest, Northeast, and even Southeast.
You mentioned that you delivered food to Safe Alliance. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and what connected you to Keep Austin Fed?
One of our first catering companies that started donating food to us was doing the catering for a few of the high-tech corporations downtown. And so every day at 3:00, they'd come back to the catering kitchen with hot trays of food that just never got put out on the buffet. And we would go by and pick it up while it was still hot. And that catering kitchen was just around the corner from Safe. And so we would take it from there to Safe while it was still hot. We always have staff do these food runs first to make sure we've worked out all the logistics. The very first time I did it, I was talking to their pantry manager, and they said probably people will just come with their Tupperwares. Safe has like little blocks of apartments, and he said they'll come with their Tupperware, fill it up, and then they'll just go back to their apartment block and eat it in their own places. And when I came back the next time, he said it was amazing because they didn't do that. They came down with plates and they served themselves up and they all sat in the community room and had a meal together. I mean, I'm still getting goosebumps every time I say it because to me, like that is a community, as many communities are, where you just can benefit so much from just sitting down and having sort of a normal meal and normal conversation with folks instead of just being specifically like, I'm a domestic abuse survivor. It's just having a meal, and meals bring people together. And it was such a powerful thing for people to just enjoy having a hot meal made for them already. It was great.
The value proposition of charities is clear in that it fills a need out in society. But
Right.
I think that the value proposition for kind of a selfish purposes is, yes, it makes you feel good. Great.
Yeah.
And it does. But like the community, and in a world where there's a loneliness crisis and people
Right.
are glued to screens, I do think nonprofits, charity, distributing meals, having your friends and family volunteer with you. I don't know. I really do believe it develops a sense of community.
Oh, absolutely. We have 2 volunteers who've been doing the same food run for over 10 years. And they not only have built a great friendship with each other, but they've also built a great relationship with the 2 recipient organizations that they're taking the food to. And so that's something that I think is also a little bit unique about what Keep Austin Fed does, is that because we're going to the same place week after week, people see the same faces, people know to expect food, they know they can rely on it. They don't always know what it's going to be, the nature of surplus food, but they know they can rely on food coming there. And so because we're seeing people week after week and some of the same faces, then it builds a trust, it builds that community, it builds those relationships. And I think that's what keeps our volunteers there, is that they feel like they're filling that need and building relationships with people that they may not otherwise ever meet.
And what do you think brings volunteers to begin with?
We've asked that question, actually, and it's twofold. So like I said, our mission is to reduce hunger and help the environment. And so half of our volunteers come because of the obvious, we want to help feed our neighbors. Nobody should go hungry. Almost everybody believes food is a basic human right. But what people don't necessarily know, and some volunteers come for this reason, is the environmental impact of food waste. And food waste in the landfill, I said, generates methane, which is 20 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. But it has an atmospheric life of a decade instead of a century, like carbon dioxide. So the quickest way we can curb the climate impact is to reduce the food that's going into our waste stream.
Today. Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
And 10 years from now, that methane will be out of our environment versus carbon dioxide takes 100 years. So this is making a relatively immediate impact by reducing food waste.
Yeah, while we're still alive. That's great. I love those stories. I do ask every guest to do a good brag or share a good brag. And that's just because I am encouraging people to talk about the good they've been doing. Because don't you want all of your volunteers to go around talking about them volunteering?
Oh, absolutely. I wish they would.
So I want people to feel like they're not bragging. It's something good. And it could be anything small, big.
I do believe in the little things, and I don't know that it's necessarily a brag. In this world, one of my pet peeves is when you ask somebody how they're doing or how things are going, and they say, very busy. Like, everybody is very busy, and that is one of my pet peeves. So I wish everybody would slow down a little bit, hold the door open for somebody, say hello. When they say thank you, say you're welcome. If somebody needs to get into your lane, slow down, let somebody into your lane. Like, we are all just in such a hurry. And I find myself just all the time telling myself that I'm not in a hurry. Things will still happen. Let's just take a minute and be friendly. So I think that's one thing. And then being on the nonprofit side of things, I know how valuable stuff like recurring donations are. So I have a couple pet nonprofits besides my own that I make recurring donations to. I have a real soft spot in my heart for people with Down syndrome. And so I make a donation to Ruby's Rainbow every month. And KUT is being hit by these federal funding cuts. I listen to KUT every day. So I bumped up my monthly donation to KUT. I think the little things, if you think about what you would normally spend on a lunch or a breakfast or a coffee, and you just say, let me skip one coffee a day and donate that money to a nonprofit.
That's what I've said. I've
Or
said
one coffee a week. Yeah.
Yeah, one coffee a week, or in Austin, like one cocktail a week goes really far.
Right. That's $15. And you're like,
Exactly.
$15 a month can help a nonprofit.
With
It
tip
adds
and
up.
everything. I think it's like almost $20 nowadays in
Yeah.
some places. And the reoccurring donation really helps these nonprofits sustain the work and plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all nonprofits hit this summer slump of individual donations coming in. And so we get real panicky right about this time of year. How are we going to make our budget? But having those recurring donations that at least this much money is coming in every month. And how do you improve that?
Yeah. I liked your other good brag because I am definitely a person that's like going to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. But one of my pet peeves is lack of manners. My son is turning 17 on Sunday, and I told him I'm sensing a lack of manners from Generation Z. And like, You need
Do not be one of them.
Yeah, do not be one of them. Let's keep chivalry alive a little bit, or, just good manners. I'm sure listeners know for the reoccurring ones that I talk about Reddit every now and then, because that's like a pastime for me, is just looking through Reddit and the Austin subreddit, which is a little bit negative. I'll warn you if you ever go to the Austin subreddit. So you have to be mindful of that. But the most recent one that was the most popular was, where did manners go in Austin?
Right. For sure.
Yeah. So anyway, that is a good brag. Keep up the manners, everyone, because I think that's contagious.
Yes, I think so too.
Makes everyone just happy around you, even if you don't know the people that you're interacting with.
It does. How many times does some stranger come up and say, "Oh, I really like your outfit. I really like that shirt you're wearing." And you're like, "Thank you." And you feel great about it. And it's just a weird kind of interaction, but it makes you feel good.
Oh, you think about it way later, right?
And you wear that shirt like 3 times that week.
Gotta wash this shirt again. It looks good on me. Yeah, I actually just right outside of the studio just a couple of weeks ago, I'm starting to look at like kids my son's age all the time. I'm looking up and down, oh, their fashion. What are they wearing? Because I'm always thinking about what to get my son for clothes. Right. And this guy, he's probably like 21, 22. I was like, man, I liked your outfit. You're doing like the sandwich thing. He looked at me like he's never been complimented on an outfit. Right. So it does feel good. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears and give listeners a chance for good bragging rights so that they can go talk about how to support Keep Austin Fed. So Lisa, September is a particular month this year to y'all.
Yes. September is Hunger Action Month. And there's no better time than September to start getting involved. And whether that's volunteering with an organization like Keep Austin Fed, again, like I said, you can sign up for that volunteer orientation and you're a volunteer for life. So September, just take that one step. We have a volunteer who we just highlighted on our social media, and one of his mottos is go and do it no matter what. And just do that. Do that piece. Sign up for a volunteer orientation. There's obviously money donations. So your time, your treasure, any organization can use those. Think about maybe coordinating a food drive at your office. Again, we get about 5% shelf-stable items, but we still get 5% shelf-stable items. And there are some very specific things that older adults can use. They really want peanut butter because a spoonful of peanut butter is an easy way to get protein. They don't have to cook anything. They don't have to prepare anything. The peel top, the cans of fruit are easy for them. They're very specific items for older adults, for our unhoused population, for the youth that we serve, that we still would love to have those contributed because they go over really well and they last a long time.
And talk about building a sense of community. Do this with your cul-de-sac.
Exactly.
Do this with
your
other
neighborhood,
moms
your office.
or dads.
Exactly.
Yeah, easy.
Exactly. I definitely encourage people to reach out to us if they want to do that. We're happy to provide lists of preferred items and do something like that. And then the other is to just advocate and spread the word. When COVID hit in 2020, we were just starting to see a decline in food insecurity rates over a decade. And then COVID hit and it spiked immediately. But then we hit a low because we got extra SNAP benefits to people who were on SNAP. And so food insecurity rates decreased significantly in 2021. And it was a huge drop. And now that those COVID SNAP benefits have been removed, and now we're cutting SNAP benefits even greater. So something that's had a proven impact on food security is now being removed from a population of about 40-something million people. Advocate or talk to your representatives and everybody you know and say, SNAP is a good thing. For every dollar the federal government spends on SNAP, it's $1.80 back into our local economy. It's something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, the impact not only on our local economy, but how much that really benefits people. And so I think we need to advocate for that. And then, like I said, spread the word. Follow our social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. If you see something that's interesting, please share it. We want to increase our visibility. Like I said, we don't want to be the best kept secret necessarily. So we're trying to get the word out.
Yeah. Just real quick, going back to the volunteer, I just want to reiterate. So just 1 hour Zoom orientation, super easy. Do it from home. No minimal commitment. Volunteer shifts are only an hour and just requires a car. So anyone that wants to come in the car, if you want to do this with your son or daughter, your spouse, whoever, if you want to get in the car with someone, listen to a podcast or something and go do a food rescue.
It's great. And we encourage that, in fact, because it's always more fun to do it with somebody else, first of all. It's quicker to do it with somebody else. It alleviates this hesitation of, I don't know where I'm going exactly. Having somebody else makes it more lighthearted if you get a little panicky. But like I said, we have all the instructions are on the app, and you can always text us, call us, and say, I'm having a problem. It's really simple. And I think that's one of the things the volunteers really like about what we do is, again, they get to choose their own schedule, do things that fit into their schedule, and it's where they live, where they work, etc. If you don't have a car, we do still have the hub volunteer shifts. And so if you can take a bus to one of our hubs or ride your bike or whatever, that's great too.
Awesome. I say over and over again, if you don't see a friend enough and you're one of those people like, oh, every time we try and get together, then it ends up being a year later, just make something monthly, weekly with them for 1 hour and get some time in with them in the car. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes just having that traditional, like reoccurring time together and doing something good is a great idea.
And a coworker, if you're working in person at your office space, how many times do we get to know our coworkers outside of the office? So take an hour, grab a coworker, go do this food run together, away from the computers, not in a conference room, get to know each other a little bit better as you do it. And I think it's a great bonding experience or opportunity in general for families, coworkers, friends, neighbors, etc.
Yeah, I really like that. And then I know that your team works very hard. And we talked about Texas Stars Foundation does like to give to those that give to our community. And so we have 4 Texas Stars hockey tickets. I know that you have a team of 4 here in Austin. Is that right?
That is right. We have 1 remote team member, so we have 4 here in Austin.
Okay. Do you think that y'all would be open to going to a hockey game together?
That would be great. Because we work so independently, we don't have an office space. It would be great to have that sort of team building opportunity.
Yeah, talk about getting to know your colleagues.
I know it, right?
Thank you to Texas Stars Foundation. Y'all have a lot of fun. This hockey season begins October 10th. Well, thanks for everything that your team does. I think what y'all are doing is really great. You're tackling 2 needs with 1 mission, and I love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for having us.
So, quick fix before we head out. I mentioned earlier that the NFL was tax exempt. That used to be true, but not anymore. In 2015, after 73 years, the league office gave up its 501c6 status. Now, a lot of people heard that and thought, did the NFL just lose billions in tax breaks? Not really. The exemption only applied to the league office in New York and not the teams, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Chiefs. The league office was basically a fancy HR department running on team dues. The real reason that they went tax exempt was a problem of PR. Politicians were grilling them as a billion-dollar nonprofit, and Roger Goodell's salary, $44 million in 1 year, was splashed everywhere. $44 million. That's more than the GDP of some small countries. So the NFL said, you know what? This isn't worth the bad headlines. Sometimes the IRS isn't the scariest thing out there. It's the front page of the New York Times. And this tension between nonprofits, politics, and public trust, it's not just football. Take the Christian Coalition of America. Pat Robertson started this in 1989, and by the 90s, it was one of the most powerful religious conservative groups in America. They handed out voter guides in churches, shaped Republican politics, but here's the catch. They wanted 501c3 charitable status, and those rules are strict. Educating on issues? Fine. Endorsing candidates? Nope. They should have consulted with Courtney Dickey, who clearly already knew that you have to stay away from politics to keep that nonprofit status. But if you haven't listened to certain past episodes, she is also a lawyer. So after nearly a decade of haggling, the IRS told the Christian Coalition of America, too political, no exemption for you. Moral of the story, if you want tax perks, you can't run around playing kingmaker in elections. But fast forward to today, under the Trump administration, which Courtney brought up, we've seen high-profile threats to revoke tax-exempt status from places like Harvard and NPR. And what I love is that Courtney brought this up during our episode, and she doesn't know these topics ahead of time. She's just spot on. She knows her stuff and stays on top of the news. So legally, the president can't just grab a Sharpie and cross out your tax-exempt status. That still has to go through the IRS via audits and due process. But the threats, they absolutely matter. They make headlines, they sow doubt and put pressure on organizations. And here's where it makes an impact. Even if your nonprofit keeps its status, of course, you could lose federal money. Harvard, for example, was recently threatened with losing billions in federal funding over campus protests. And here in Austin, Lisa mentioned that she upped her donation to KUT, Austin's NPR station, due to losing federal funding, which was an estimated $1.2 million a year. That's about 6% of their budget. So go Lisa, she stepped up in her giving to help fill that gap. Then there's the Johnson Amendment. Since 1954, it's been the rule keeping churches and other 501c3s from endorsing political candidates. So going back to that political hot seat for a lot of nonprofits. And for decades, it kept pulpits from doubling as campaign podiums. But recently, after a lawsuit, the IRS softened enforcement. Now, if a church tells its own congregation to support a candidate, it's not considered political intervention. Not a repeal, but a big shift. And here's why people are fired up. As Court and I discussed, churches already enjoy special privileges. Unlike every other nonprofit, they don't have to file annual financial forms with the IRS. So even though you have some churches, like Courtney's, that do disclose their financials, there is no required Form 990, no public breakdown of where the money goes. Combine that with looser political restrictions, and critics are saying you've basically created a tax-deductible backdoor for campaign spending. Supporters call it religious liberty. Opponents call it dark money. They cannot see the inflows and outflows of those nonprofit funds. Now, let's pivot back to the amazing work Keep Austin Fed is doing for our neighbors and our planet. I loved this conversation with Lisa. Their whole model is just brilliant because the problem isn't a lack of food, it's where it goes. While 1 in 7 Austinites don't know where their next meal is coming from, Lisa and her team are bridging that gap, matching surplus food with people who need it. And here's the great part, you can help in a really tangible way. Donate food. If you run a restaurant, a bakery, a catering company, Keep Austin Fed will come pick up your surplus food for free and get it to local nonprofits. Volunteer. So you have a car? Great. You have 1 hour a week? Fantastic. Lend a small amount of your time. Remember, the average food rescue takes about an hour and provides 160 meals for your neighbors. That's the kind of math I can get behind. That's impact. And hey, because we like to sweeten the deal, if you sign up to volunteer or donate this month, you'll be earned into a drawing for Texas Stars hockey tickets, thanks to our partnership with the Texas Stars Foundation. Free hockey, and you get to feed people and save the planet. That's a win. Show up for Keep Austin Fed, post it on social media, and use #GoodBrag and DM us at Escape Into a Cause, and we will make sure that you're entered into the giveaway. Huge thanks to Lisa for such a thoughtful conversation, and thanks to Nightlight Insurance Agency for presenting Escape Into a Cause, and to Todd Thompson for editing and mixing, Corey McCain at Just Push Record Studios, and Ashlyn O'Neill for digital content. Next week, we're switching things up. Lisa mentioned that one of their partnerships with Keep Austin Fed is the Salvation Army Rathgeber Center for Families. And instead of a nonprofit next week, I actually sat down with one of Austin's most iconic philanthropists, Dick Rathgeber. He built a fortune in real estate, but became known for making sure charities benefited right alongside him. Now in his 90s, he's still going strong, sharing stories about making money, giving it away, and the ripple effects he's created across Austin. I can't wait for you to hear it. So join me next week as we escape into the world of Dick Rathgeber, his deals, his giving, and his wisdom. I hope you join me next week. It's going to be a good one.